Hello everyone. We decided to wait till this time of the evening in order to allow people to have the opportunity to talk to each other before the speeches start. And I'll just keep on introducing it until I hear silence. Which I'm sure will happen eventually. For those of you who don't know me, my name's David Gruen, and I have a passing resemblance to the person who we are celebrating this evening. Both Nicholas and I have a number of stories about our parents which we regularly bring out for public consumption at times like this. And one of our father's most endearing qualities was to be absent-minded and say the funniest things when he didn't mean to. And one of the things he said, which is relevant for tonight, he was trying to place something in time, and he said, looking at the two of us, one of you was born, I forget which one. And since he'd been there at the time, you would have hoped that he would have at least worked that out. But I'm here to tell you that it was me. I was the one who was born first. And I have a memory which is either a real memory or it's one of those things you get told sufficiently often that you begin to believe it. I guess these days we'd call it fake news. But the memory is of being in a car and Mum getting out of the car to go to the hospital to have my sibling, who turned out to be Nicholas. But that was at 2.5. So the question is whether I really did remember it or was told the story sufficiently often that it's now a memory. I'm only going to say, I've got an impressive list of people here who are going to speak. I'm only going to say a couple more things. One of them is that we both internalised the idea that it was a dumb idea to do what our father did. So I became a physicist and Nick became a historian and did law. So they were sufficiently different from what he did that we thought we were safe. But it didn't last because by the time I was 30, I was an economist. And I think around about the same time, Nick decided that the law was all very well, but it would be much more interesting if he did public policy. So we both ended up, much to our mother's chagrin, being carbon copies of what our father did, at least to a considerable extent. So there you are. The only other reflection I was going to make was that we didn't get on that well as children. We were pretty good at winding each other up. I think actually he was better at winding me up than the other way around, but neither here nor there. But our relationship has improved dramatically with age, and now that we are in advancing years, we're really quite fond of each other, so we have lots of interactions about the vagaries of the world. We share chess problems with each other. I'm a better player than he is, but he sends me more chess problems than I send him, and they're always fun to play through. So I think it's much better for a relationship to improve rather than go the other way, and so I'm very glad that that's been the way it's worked out. Things started out rocky but have improved very substantially. So without further ado, I'm now going to start calling on people who are on this list to come up and speak and talk about Nicholas. So the first person on this list is Anna, who's going to come and speak.
So thanks everyone for coming to celebrate with us today, especially everyone who's come from interstate. I've been a little bit nervous about giving this speech because it's really hard to sum up how special a parent is just in a few minutes, but I've tried to choose a few stories tonight that give a little taste to everyone here of just how lucky I've been growing up with someone like my dad. So some of my earliest memories reveal Dad's pretty silly side. My grandparents lived in Canberra, and we'd always travel there on a plane from when I was very young. And I think as a strategy to distract us from something that we would otherwise have found pretty scary, Dad would always pretend that we were boarding a restaurant. So he'd sit down and we'd pull out the menu and ask what we'd be ordering. And from when I was about 4, I remember thinking to myself, for a public intellectual, it's taking Dad a really long time to understand that we're actually boarding an aeroplane and not going to a restaurant. And so we'd take off every time and Dad would feign surprise, and we'd have to convince him that we were actually on an aeroplane after all and that there was really nothing to worry about. But he did manage to trick me whenever we actually were at a restaurant, because Dad's favourite dessert was sticky date pudding, and which I also loved. But he managed to convince me that there was such thing as the yummy police, and these are authorities that were said to burst into the restaurant every time you were eating anything too yummy and arrest you. So at about age 4, whenever we ordered a sticky date, I did feel like a real little rebel as we scoffed down the cake, trying to be as inconspicuous as we could. But some of my favourite memories that I've shared with my dad have been during trips overseas. When I was 12, he agreed to chaperone me to a children's conference in Japan, and we got to spend a few days before travelling together. My mum would have been a little bit horrified at my bedtime for those days, because Dad's favourite time to walk a new city is at night. So I remember we'd walk around and I was pretty dazzled by the big lights of Tokyo. He took me to every theme park we could find, the grand finale being Disneyland, where we spent the full day. But whether visiting the old city of Jerusalem or roaming my grandfather's birthplace in Vienna, Dad's always been a great travel buddy. I'd always especially admire his ability to answer our questions that we'd throw at him, me and Alex, about absolutely anything. But more than that, I think I'm lucky because I know that few daughters are in the position that I can and do talk to my dad about pretty much anything. Except he's always been much better than my mum at surprises. Just recently I was happily shocked to see him walk into a restaurant in New York because he decided to fly via the US on his way home from Europe to surprise me on my birthday. My dad's taught me some of the most important lessons that I've learned in my short life. He taught both Alex and I that it was important never to shy away from something just because you might fail. Perhaps an unintended consequence of wanting permanent chess buddies in his house, he taught us both to play at a very young age. But he'd never let us win just because we were little, which made the few times that we did beat him all the more sweet. He also used to make sure he knew that he was proud of us for unconventional achievements. He'd never be as excited for us to come home with an academic medal as he would if we told him that we'd decided to audition for the school play because it really scared us, or we'd stood up for someone in the playground. And that's one of the second important lessons that he taught us, that there are few things worth compromising what you believe in to achieve. I really admire my dad for his hard work and his courage to put forward new ideas, and I hope I'm brave enough to do the same in my life. But I'm most grateful to him for the unwavering love and support he's always given me, and the constant reminders that he's proud of us. And I stand here tonight really proud to be his daughter.
Well, that's a very high standard, so we're just going to hope that other people can match it. Alex Coram. Alex? Here he comes. Hello.
I've seen you. I've never met you.
No, we have not met.
Okay, so I've got it.
You good?
Yeah, I got something on a bit of paper I found. Okay. Well, it's a great privilege being asked to speak at Nick's birthday. Nicholas Gruen is a friend of mine, and I believe he's something of a national treasure. I'd be tempted to list all his achievements and service to the community and publications, but if I did so, it would just make me feel bad and inadequate, so I'm going to skip all that. and I'm going to speak a little bit about the Nicholas I know. The philosopher Isaiah Berlin made a famous division of intellectual types into foxes and hedgehogs. A hedgehog knows only one thing, maybe one big thing, and a fox knows many things and manages to combine them in all sorts of creative ways to produce new ideas and new insights. Nicholas is definitely a fox. I mean, like Brer Fox or Reynard the Fox or the Fantastic Mister or Wile E. Coyote. I'm clearly fishing here, but you get the idea. You know, and like a fox, he has a fast intellect, a nice sense of humour, and really quite a deal of charm. Some people might even say he was cute, but I wouldn't go so far. Some evidence of this, for those who follow many of Nick's writings and blog posts, is the sort of material you get. I mean, who else is going to write an essay which combines Luhnig, Nietzsche, Adam Smith, Maynard Keynes, Hegel, and probably Andy Murray in a technical paper on public policy reform? Or we'll put up on the same day a post to tell you that something like 400 research years have been wasted in applying for failed ARC grants. And it was idiotic for somebody to try and burn the EU flag because under EU regulations it had to be made of non-flammable material, together with a very lengthy discussion of the benefits of making central banking available to the entire population. Now, I guess if you had to find the mixture of things in Nick's particular fox, or you wanted a benchmark, I guess I'd put in Oscar Wilde. That comes from Nick having to patiently, and I think fairly patronisingly, explain to me as I bogged down in mathematics that really lateral economics was more a fashion statement than a technical set of analytical tools. So Oscar Wilde's in there, Maynard Keynes is in there. After what David said, we'll put Magnus Carlsen in there, and why not? And George Orwell. Despite being a fox, Nick actually does have some spines. I think one of the enduring spine is his concern, and in some sense it's possibly aesthetic or Wildian, about much of the obfuscation and silliness and banality that gets passed off strategic analysis or company reports or advice on policy. You get things such as going forward on the ground, deliverables, the endless policy cycle diagrams with little boxes or circles, depending on the artistic merits or lack thereof, with things like provide effective leadership, hire sound people, communicate. I know this because he seems to delight in filling my inbox with them, knowing full well that I get apoplectic. Indeed, perhaps he's trying to bring on my early demise through some sort of heart attack. Having said that, I don't think it's all Oscar Wilde. I think there's a lot of George Orwell there. I think one of the great problems of our age, and I think Nick is aware of this, in fact I'm sure he's more aware of this than I am, is in fact the debasement of public discourse and reason and arguments with trivia and sound bites and simply a repetition of often quite meaningless words and phrases. And in this I think he's quite Orwellian, and I think he has a strong point. Now just to finish off, I once read a thing on public speaking that said you should never end on a sour note. So I did. I said that. I said it. And Nick might have sent it to me, but I read it. I'd like to tell a joke that Nick told to me. Like all of Nick's jokes, it wasn't very funny. That's not sour. it had a great deal of what I see as the essence of Nick's personality: humour, sadness, pathos, dealing with absurdity, trying to make the best of things as they come along, and human struggles in the face of uncertainty. And the joke goes as follows, as best I remember. Moses, my history is appalling. My knowledge of foxes is probably better. Moses is leading the lost tribe through the desert, and things are going wrong. You know, dogs and cats are sleeping together, cactuses are growing everywhere. You know, people are fighting. They're not washing their cars. Just everything's going wrong. And so the elders go to Moses, and Moses, they say, it's terrible, it's all gone to custard. That's a New Zealand term, I think in New Zealand. It's all gone to custard. We need some rules. And Moses says, okay guys, I'll go and get you some. So off he goes. And he's away for years and years, and he comes back and says, I got some rules. They say, great Moses, what are they? Read them out. He says, here they are. Wash behind your ears. Do what your mother tells you. Clean your teeth twice a day. It's on and on. So the elders say, Moses, these rules are rubbish. Now we want proper rules, not these rubbish rules. We've got hundreds of them. You know, we want the sort of rules you can carve in tablets of stone. Okay, guys, he says. So off Moses goes. And it comes down years and years later, and it's just all terrible. They're melting things and making statues of cows or roosters or something. Anyway, it turns up with these rules. The elders come up. They're very old, the elders now. The elders come up and say, Moses, what's going on? It's been terrible here. What took you so long? So, well, guys, it was a real struggle. I got some good news and some bad news. And they say, what is it, Moses? Tell us the good news and the bad news. He says, the good news is I got him down to 10. The bad news is adultery's still in. And this is the joke Nick told me. And I think this sums up a lot of Nick's personality. So I say, well done, Nick. Keep up the struggle. Keep up the fight against absurdity.
I've heard that joke too. The third person on my list is Kathy Coultis.
Wow, okay, that's a really hard act to follow. And mine is not going to be nearly so engaging, but really the story is that in 1979, Eva, who's Nick's wife, who's here, there she is, Eva and I, two very innocent girls, went to Bergman College at ANU. And there we first were confronted with Mr. Lippert Bilayers here, David Gruen, otherwise known as Darwinian Express. And we really, we were impressed. I mean, we were amazed, I think. We were like, wow, you know, he's pretty amazing. And then along comes his brother, Nicholas. And on comes Nick. Now, Nick was, in those days, really, you know, one of the cool kids on the block, I think. And he's, yeah, well, that's right, he would argue he hasn't changed. And, you know, bopping along to the best of them and having a great time. Really, it was about prowess as a hot dog skier and, you know, knowing all the moves on the dance floor and all of that kind of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But his inclination towards experimentation showed itself in early years where we were contemplating the hypothesis that blondes have more fun. And how better to prove this than to become, and I think I'm quoting here, a blonde bombshell in your own right. So Nick transformed himself into a blonde bombshell, and he really lived it out. And I think You'll have to ask him personally whether or not he had more fun as a blonde. But I think ultimately he decided that probably, brunettes were really pretty good too, so he went back to that. Anyway, so over the years we've had a lot of fun, Nick and Eva and I, and everyone, I'm sure all of you know him in all of his wonderfulness as his smartness and all of that kind of stuff. But we know him for his quirky humour, we can still laugh about Woody Allen jokes. We can still, Nick and I just the other night just cracked up completely over the whole bloody butcher's paper situation that we're all in now. And, these things, there is a, from my point of view personally, a lifelong delightful silliness in Nick that is just wonderful. And we can laugh about all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Nick had a great friend called Alan Schneider, who I just asked him tonight, did you invite Alan Schneider to this function? Which I was very sad to say that he didn't. I'm shocked actually that he didn't invite Alan Schneider, because Alan was an ongoing joke. I think it went for like about 10 years. And wherever we were, we would say, like, Alan Schneider, where is Alan Schneider? And I personally never met Alan Schneider. But Nick was always very concerned, lest I say it too loudly, that Alan might hear. And what can you do when you've got friends that are, not behaving properly in public places? But anyway, it's been a lovely, we were counting it the other day, 38 years, which is really quite a big number. But anyway, it's been a great journey, and thanks, Nick, for your friendship. Thank you. Hang on, just let me say one other thing. David reminded me of this in his talk about his parents. Now, I knew Nick's mum, and I once said to her something about travelling, and she said to me, Kathy, did you really expect me to travel? You've seen what these two boys are like as adults? Can you imagine what it was like with two of them when they were little? And one on each hand, they're fighting, they're carrying on, it was a nightmare. I said, that's it, we're not travelling.
Well, thanks for that, Kathy. I must say, until you mentioned it, I'd forgotten, or at least it was deep in my memory, Nick's brief blonde period. It was quite something, and
I was going to bring the photo, but Eva said
and
you said that we're not having photos.
our mum was quite hard, was quite unflappable most of the time. But I must admit that when Nick walked in with the blonde hair, she was quite surprised and didn't quite know what to say. She was always wanted to be supportive, but she had a bit of trouble being supportive about that.
She was lucky that was a...
Well, that didn't last that long, thank God. The next person on my list is Nick Camper, who isn't here. No? Nick.
Hi everyone. So I've worked with Nick for a few years now, quite closely, and thought I'd say a few words tonight. So it was always going to be a little bit difficult speaking tonight because I was caught between the tension of Nick's utter distaste for corny and overused expressions and my like for them. So I had to make the very delicate and sensitive decision to omit no corny and overused expressions from my speech. So as it goes, Nick Gruen is a little like a box of chocolates. He's as predictable as he is unpredictable. It's not uncommon for me to receive an email from Nick, a reply actually, lambasting me for using a particular expression that was just too corny or it's well overused. and with scarce reference to the original content of the email in the first place. So my learning began as I worked with Nick. I could no longer be completely honest with him, just honest. In fact, all conversations would be engaged with under the presumption that I would be honest, so there was no reason to state that I was going to be completely honest. But, well, Nick, to be honest, I'd like to say tonight how much I value our friendship and why you are the most curious and, for that reason, intelligent person I know and probably have the pleasure of ever meeting. But more importantly, why you're one of my most treasured friends. The intriguing thing about you is obviously how unpredictable you can be, which I always found strange because I always thought that your thought process was, despite its rarity, was often left to bare. It's you consider things on their merits and void of any prejudice that might distort your judgment. I've told people before that Nick is likely to approach a conversation with a 5-year-old child just as likely as he is to approach the conversation with perhaps anyone in this room. Void of any prejudice and take into account all the information that has been passed on to him. But it's something that's inspired me how you intentionally blind yourself from positioning and you enthuse yourself with just the argument. And it's how you, I suppose, fascinate others every day. You showcase how easy it can be interesting to some extent by replacing your prejudice with curiosity. And and it's through this quality that you fascinate others every day. I decided that I wanted to speak tonight to say a few words because I thought his 60th birthday would be an opportune time to expose Nick for what he truly is. Not an intellectual titan that many people want to hear from or an innovative thinker that inspires social and economic change. He's an empathetic softie who hopes that no one took anything the wrong way and will stay up all night hoping that they didn't. He's a guy that won't neglect an opportunity to give good people a voice. He's the ex-chair of Innovation Australia, and he still uses cassettes over Spotify. I assure you Spotify's got Tracy Chapman and Elton John and all the rest. But no, I haven't, my relationship with Nick didn't come at no cost. I've no longer got a good or a bad voice in the back of my head. I've got Nick Gruen constantly telling me in the back of my head after every decision I make that you've just used an overused or corny expression and you sound like an idiot. Or you just judge something for being right or left and you're missing the merits and the flaws of the argument, or you're being too self-righteous and you should consider things objectively. I'm tainted with his ghost, but to be honest, and as corny as it is, I wouldn't have it any other way. I should have unfolded first. But I'd like to state the obvious. I'm a young bloke, so comparatively to my social groups, whether you like it or not, you're relatively an old bloke. And people find it strange why I spend my weekend nights or any other odd time, middle of dinner, running out to chat to Nick on the phone or texting him or whatever. But it's less likely that they find it strange why I'm leaving dinner to chat to Nick, but more probable that they don't know why Nick chats to me. I don't know why Nick chats to me, but I know that here's another one for you. There's more to Nick than one conversation could ever give you. For whatever legacy you leave behind, Nick, for the lack of any other corny or overused expression that I could possibly use, I'll continue to honour that legacy by doing anything that I can do that's good to honour your life of public service and the legacy you have of trying to do good yourself. So thank you.